Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another amazing episode of No Earthly Explanation with your host, Brittany Barbieri, and my fantastic host who just flew in fancy style on a UFO himself, Mr. Don Schmidt. How are you, Don?
I am wonderful this evening, Brit. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. We have a fun show tonight. I'll give you a little bit of a tidbit about them. It is Nash and Makaila Hoover from Chasing Legends, excuse me. But before we get into that, I'm a little caught up on a news report that just hit a few days ago, and I really think that we need to discuss this. And for those listeners that are tuning in right now, I think that they'll be excited to talk about this, or at least hear our discussion in regards to this, as it's a pretty heavily redacted report that came out regarding UFOs, UAPs, whatever they want to call it, or USATF, which was like the longest thing that came out, reports on these unidentified flying objects in the sky, much like the Nimitz. So how do you feel about this? Because looking at it, even heavily redacted, there's still some key point factors in there that I was pretty taken back on.
Well, our colleague John Greenwald at the Black Vault, who he makes it his business in submitting Freedom of Information Act requests relentlessly, and much to his credit, that he received this, as you described, Britt, this heavily redacted June 25th of last year's report that on UAPs that went to both the Pentagon and Congress. And one whole portion of it describes UFO shapes. Well, first of all, the question would be, why would there be any discussion of shapes regarding UAPs? And then more importantly, why would they be redacted? Why would this be something treated as though this was a matter of national security? And the obvious question that at least comes to mind in my case is that obviously in being able to discern the shapes of these unknown aerial objects, that they are not of a conventional shape and design, immediately would suggest something non-earthly, suggesting a technology from off the planet. So that may be the reason that they would redact such information. And yet this information would go all the way back to post-World War II, that the Air Force already was compiling descriptions of shapes, sizes. Even the very first letter that General Nathan Twining signed off on as to an estimate of the situation regarding the new flying saucer phenomenon talked about the shapes, talked about how we were dealing with flying saucers, that these were disc shaped, these were dome discs, these were like an inverted plate over the top of another plate, and then hence the very description of flying saucers. So again, the question of why the redaction, why the concern of shapes, and then it would also demonstrate the accuracy of our very sophisticated equipment, that it isn't just picking up an orb of light, it's actually able to discern that there is a solid body, that there is a shape behind this glowing orb, and then whether these shapes are actually aerodynamic, or is something suggesting, again, something more sophisticated, something more advanced. So I find it intriguing in that we're dealing with something that suggests a genuine anomaly. And as a result, that they are able to break them down into specific shapes and sizes is more important than the fact that they're redacted in the first place, as much as I personally feel that they're more concerned that if they actually were to suggest we're dealing with something saucer shaped, something cigar, something that doesn't have wings, doesn't have a tail section, and as a result, they don't want to give people these catchphrases once again, like they did back in 1947 with flying saucer.
Right.
They'd like keep it UAP, UFO in that regard. So it says more about their continuing effort to steer us into areas where they can manage the release of the information. And then hence the reason at the moment that they've redacted the very shapes that people have reported, that their
Right.
own personnel, military pilots, SAC officers, radar operators have been able to establish. And so it's a continuing step forward. And it makes me all the more optimistic that there is more than just smoke behind all the fire.
Oh yeah, I agree with that completely. I find it always, for me, whenever these reports come out and you get the chance to actually see them, especially through the Black Vault, I always enjoy when anything comes out. I always love how much is redacted, but on this particular one, it's fascinating to me. It's not like we're not aware of the different shapes that are out there. But on this particular report, it's coming from the UAPs, which for listeners that may not know what that means, that's unidentified aerial phenomenon that was switched from UFO to, I think, kind of get away from the cliche of UFO. But you have this redacted thing talking about all these different shapes that you can't see what it says from, Navy pilots that they are now investigating. And then the USATF is now investigating it further. And basically, from what it states, is the plan to leverage the data, which I love the leverage information, their data sharing of the non-military departments and the federal governments to learn more about this phenomenon, which we, the public, have already known for a very long time. And just like, Don, J. Allen Hynek, these are things that have been around for a long period of time that we've been waiting for more information to come out. But I think for me, it's why redact the shapes, the sizes so much? It's not like we don't know. It's not like we don't have photographs. It's not like we haven't seen it. I mean, heck, when the Nimitz video came out, we had a great visual of what we're looking at. And just as much as you and I both know, there's several different sizes and shapes out there that people identify, from a sphere to a cigar to a tic tac to an egg shape. So why do you think they have to redact it that much on the size and the shapes?
And to me, it's a continuation on the theme. As much as they feel they need to control the template, what people's perception of the phenomenon is. And if they go into more detail, then they are actually starting to define more and more hardware, nuts and bolts. There is a phenomenon behind the phenomenon. And as a result, the more vague, the more they continue to essentially present this as national security, then they control as far as the game. They hold on to the ball. And the last thing that the government ever does is relinquish any control. Anytime that they claim that, well, we can't reveal our lookout posts, our networks, we can't reveal our techniques by which we derive at our conclusions, that, well, that may apply as far as the covert activity within intelligence and the idea that we don't want to play our hand. But you're telling us, as you have for 75 years, that the phenomena doesn't exist. Well, now you're throwing us some crumbs, but again, you're still trying to maintain control of the ball. And as a result, it's a step in the right direction, but the fact that they're acknowledging that there are different shapes and sizes, again, contrary to standard aircraft, once again, suggests that we're dealing with a nuts and bolts as far as phenomenon that is tracked on radar, that is visually observed, that leaves depressions and swirled areas of grass on the ground. It breaks branches. It interacts with the witnesses. And as a result, they don't want to go that far, not just yet. And that's where it's up to us to keep the pressure on.
Absolutely. But I have one last question for you before we move forward with our guests. With now the UAPTF, the Unexplained Aerial Phenomenon Task Force, do you think that they're going to truly start making headway in the investigation, and to where more of these types of documents are going to start like coming out more for us to see, and we'll notice a difference in how redacted this one is as far as, let's go 6 months in? Do you think that the redaction will be less because they're starting to weed it out and that task force is actually doing their job?
No, my experience is that the redactions are a case of where a document is not even declassified unless someone actually knocks on the door, unless someone even submits a Freedom of Information Act request. The very idea that there's someone sitting at the Pentagon and is classified, non-class, that type, unclassified, that type of thing, redacting, non-redacted, that type of thing. No. They don't have the time and the inclination. It's only when you make such a request. And that's what Greenwald did regarding wanting to see the actual June 25th UAP report from last year. So to me, and we've said this all along, that unless we have congressional hearings, unless we allow whistleblowers immunity with an opportunity to actually testify and describe on the record, swearing an oath that what they're about to describe actually did happen, documents come a dime a dozen. And unfortunately, most UFO documents are heavily redacted, whether it's National Security Act, CIA, Air Force Intelligence. And so here we can't even get information regarding the shapes, let alone, if we're dealing with an actual phenomenon. So no, congressional hearings. I'm gonna beat that drum until we either get a tacit no, will never happen, which to me will demonstrate they were never interested in disclosure, never interested in actually dispelling the truth regarding the phenomena, or then we need to do it ourselves. We need to create some type of a forum, like at the Washington Press Club in DC, and afford witnesses and such an opportunity. So we need to again take the bull by the horns and do what we can. We may never see this opportunity again.
Well, and I think that this is a great place to do that. You got to be the voice, right, Don? If we're going to do it, you got to talk about it and really push that envelope to get it through. So hopefully we can continue to do that here on No Earthly. So,
and we will certainly continue doing that.
Yeah. And you have my full support. So whatever we need to do to knock down any doors, you just let me know. I'm right there with you, if you know what I'm saying. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Thanks, Brit.
Of course. All right. So now that we've kind of talked on that, because I could probably talk about that for, gosh, I don't know, 2 or 3 more hours because it's quite fascinating. We'll get into our guest tonight. And as I mentioned earlier, it is Nash and Makaila Hoover, and they are both cousins, and they are the hosts of Chasing Legends that you can see on YouTube, and you can also follow them on Instagram. So without further ado, let's get right into it and bring our guests on. All right. So before we get into the show, I just want to let everybody know we're just waiting on my co-host Don to pop in to join us here. But let me go ahead and get into this tonight. We have Nash and Makaila Hoover, who are both the hosts of the YouTube channel Chasing Legends. And they chase everything within the cryptozoology total field work. So again, that's not just Bigfoot. So we're all clear, everybody. There are levels to cryptozoology that are amazing. And I am sure that they both can tell us some stories tonight and some cryptids that I'm sure our listeners are not familiar with. So let me go ahead and introduce them now. Nash, it is wonderful to have you on, as well as Makaila. And I know you both are cousins. So tell us how this all got started. What got you both interested in doing this and creating your show?
Well, as most people in this field, we wanted the fame and the money and everything that goes along. No, I was kidding. No, I think this really started out as a childhood fascination for both of us. I don't want to like completely take over this. So I want Mikaela to talk a little bit, but yeah, for me personally, I kind of came into it. I wish I had this memory. I didn't have that, that experience that kind of drove me to research. I literally started researching when I was, probably 6 or 7 years old in elementary school. I came across Bigfoot somehow and thought it was fascinating, and just I kind of started researching from there. Got into Loch Ness and UFOs, and then as the years went by, we learned more things with other shows like Monster Quest and Destination Truth, and then got into like ghost hunting, and then eventually we kind of made that big jump to cryptids.
So when you were doing all your field work and stuff, were there areas of interest that you went, gosh, I think we really need to focus more on the cryptid because this is so interesting, because there's so many creatures out there that's been discussed?
Yeah, I think because originally when we created this, it started out as we were going to kind of look at everything. We were going to do ghost hunting and cryptid stuff. The very first episode that we shot, which we'll get into later because Makaila's got some cool stories regarding that one, actually was a ghost hunt. And we had originally shot it because it was somewhere that it was nearby. We knew we could get access to it because it was in a public area. And it was literally just meant to be like a test episode. Like, it was never meant to see the light of day. Well, we had a ton of pretty crazy activity. A lot of it was directed at Makaila, and we edited together. We all watched it, and we're like, okay, we got to put this out.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the beginning of it. Originally this was created. It was myself and a good friend of mine, Caitlin Keeley, originally created the series, and it was kind of supposed to follow us. And then I brought in Makaila and my friend JC and my friend Patrick, and it was, going to be the 5 of us doing this series. Well, the only kickback was Caitlin lived in Massachusetts at the time, and we all lived in Minnesota. So we ended up doing, the 4 of us, Makaila, Patrick, JC, and I ended up doing a lot of like the groundwork and the filming. And Caitlin was supposed to come in eventually after that, but then life happens. She started a family, moved to Ireland, and that's where she lives now.
Wow.
So then the show dropped to just me hosting, with Makaila as kind of the not official, but she was my number 2. I always made sure that she got that. And then when we shot our season 1, the 4 newest episodes that are on YouTube, some things, I'm not gonna kind of get too deep into it, but she kind of got pushed out, unfortunately. But now, we had a proper sit down, and I'm like, okay, we're making you proper co-host. There's no sidelining you. This is where you belong. You've been with this project since day one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's awesome, though. I mean, I like to do a lot of projects with my brother, right? I love to bring him into the paranormal space. We've all had, accounts and stuff like that. So I think bringing family in is really cool, and having it be a part of the family, because you mentioned Makaila was your cousin. But I want to go back. So let's bring Makaila in on this one, because Makaila, I need you to tell me, he totally laid it out there in regards to what happened in this first pilot episode, and that you were the main target. So I want to know from you, what happened on your side? What was going on there with that?
Well, we were investigating an area we had been to, I think, at least once or twice before. Again, Nash said it's near our house. So we popped over. We were going to do a quick little investigation, just kind of see how things go. But towards the end of the investigation, I started feeling really nauseous and dizzy. And it definitely felt like we needed to leave. But I turned to Nash and I looked at him, and I couldn't feel this. To me, I was just telling him, hey, I think we should get out of here. I'm not feeling too good. But apparently I was physically crying, and like a large figure was just following me outside of the tunnel. So that was not a fun experience, but it was definitely intriguing enough to keep me along with it.
Wow. And you got that on camera?
We have most of it. It was not the best quality filming, honestly, when we started.
You can, so we only had one camera guy at the time, and he was, for some reason, at the front of the pack when we were walking. And when the event that she discussed kind of went down, our camera guy physically turned, but he didn't turn the camera just because it was like, kind of a pretty crazy, but you can hear in the audio, like you can hear that she is like, sounds like she's sobbing.
Yeah.
And so we were pretty much walking single file. So this was it's like a tunnel basically that we were investigating. So we were walking single file. It was JC, our camera guy, was in front. Patrick was behind him. And then it was me, and then Makaila was behind me. So I'm 5'10". Makaila, you're what, 5'4"?
I'm exactly 5 foot. Thank you very much.
5 foot? Okay. So there is that height difference. So I ended up hearing a rock skip off the wall behind me. I think it was actually 2 that we could hear in the audio. So I turned around thinking it was Makaila that did it. I shined my headlamp down at her, and she's literally just bawling tears. Like, I can see her shadow because I'm, like I said, I'm looking down at her.
Right.
I can see her shadow to her right and my left. And behind her, darker than the darkness, is literally this, like, I had to look up at it, like, shadow figure. And that was probably for her, that was probably the most intense paranormal experience, at least in that realm of things that she's ever had. And for me, that was, top 5 at least.
Yeah, well, obviously.
Seeing something.
Yeah.
So you said she's only 5 feet tall. You realize that Makaila is only 5 feet tall. That my line of work, anyone who's less than 5 feet tall, we classify as an alien.
My God, Don. So for
Makaila,
the listeners, Don is here. He's here. He popped in during when Nash was discussing and telling the story. So
my own mother is about 5 feet tall, and I'm constantly telling her to stand up, and she hits me and goes, I'm standing. So
so you go, Makaila. Now Nash may have to use that on you from time to time as a joke.
I'm 6'2", so
how do you know it's a joke?
But I mean, like, that's
awesome.
I mean, there were other things that were going on during that investigation that, it definitely ramped up. Like, it wasn't like hardcore. And, some of this is captured, because we ended up splitting up, and, Makaila and I went in, kind of one area, and then JC and Patrick went another. And, you could, there were parts where Makaila was basically, was telling me that she was hearing things that I wasn't. She, was reporting that she, I think, what do you say? You were hearing like laughing, kept hearing like people like talking, but like no one else other than you was, hearing these things. And then we were having some camera battery issues, which is kind of why the episode literally, like, as soon as the moment goes down where I saw the figure, our camera battery died, and it literally just like stopped.
Oh, so it drained
and and it's funny because we're talking about how we want to leave, and you can hear like the last audio clip is Makaila crying. You can hear her crying, and she's like, we're leaving. And I'm like, yeah, do you not want to? And she's like, no, but like you can tell she's crying, and that's the last thing you hear, and it just cuts off. Like, it's straight up like a Blair Witch scary movie.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Like, it's like, that was not how, like, that there's just literally how it panned out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And then Kayla, should we talk about when we went back?
If you really want to, unless you want to start talking about cryptids.
Yeah, but that fog situation was interesting.
Yeah, fine.
All right, so this was like what, like the following summer? I think it was. Yeah, I believe it was the following summer. So we So we go back to the same place as kind of like, hell yeah, let's get it, redemption, let's face this thing. So it was similar. I want to say it was July-ish. So it was kind of humid up here. And this tunnel, it's near a river, but it's not like directly next to it. And it is, I mean, it's concrete, so it's significantly cooler than it was on the outside, but it was nothing, crazy. So we go in, doing our investigation, and all of a sudden we notice from the direction that we came in, this kind of fog kind of appear out of nowhere. And, we kind of were set up like in the middle, pretty much dead center of the tunnel. This fog comes in and it stops like maybe 2-3 feet from where we were set up. And it's just a wall. Can't see through it. It's thick. Like we would walk into this thing and it were just in soup. Like it was just thick. We think nothing of it. We're like, okay, whatever. So we keep going. Well, Makaila starts saying, she's basically describing that she doesn't feel well. She is sick to her stomach out of nowhere. So we're like, okay, what should we do? Should we leave? So I walk up to her because she's like bent over, like near throwing up. I put my hand on her shoulder. It was just kind of like do you want to go? And as soon as I touched her, it literally felt like something reached into my stomach, grabbed it, and just twisted. Like I immediately felt what she felt. So long story short, we pack up and get out, so we go into the fog. Well, I happen to turn around to look back as we're walking out, and the fog is literally like following us out because I could see behind us where, we couldn't. And as soon as we got outside, there was nothing. There was no fog.
Oh, that's bizarre. That's bizarre. So this was the point in time where Makaila said, how about those cryptids? I think now's the time. I would really like to.
How about those
That
cryptids?
was the time for the tactile switch, I think. We're pivoting.
Enough ghosts. Let's get to the meat and potatoes.
Exactly. Don, you got questions?
At the time that Nash, you described how when you touched her that you felt this wrenching turning in your stomach. Was there any odor, strange odor, or anything associated with that? Because very often, like with a UFO experience, that there'll be a strange mist or fog. And you described earlier how like even your batteries appeared to immediately drain. I had a photographer just describe that was their case when they were just filming in the Sedona, Arizona area, that no matter how often they replaced batteries, they would be dead within 15 minutes. But very often, as far as pungent odors, smells are associated with something that, with like UFOs, where it's almost like a portal, an opening, something interdimensional, that something slips in, and as a result, it changes perception as we see it. And anything related to the supernatural, in this case, ghosts, for example, that there's this fine line that people automatically always assume you say UFOs, UAPs, you're talking about extraterrestrial. No, you're not, because we've known for many years that there's a psychic connection, that it all seems to overlap. I've had colleagues that have written books about folklore and the connection as far as throughout centuries. And we've seen how like ancient astronauts, cave depictions and drawings and paintings and that type of thing. And we realize how closely linked so many of these phenomenon are. So was there any type of a smell, or did you feel anything as far as like your hair standing up, or anything suggesting anything electrical, or a discharge of anything in the air smelling like sulfur or ozone or anything? Or was it strictly the mist, the fog, and then
from my knowledge, it was strictly just the fog. Like it just yeah, like there was no no smell other than just kind of the natural, kind of musty smell of this tunnel.
So what do you believe actually made you feel ill to your stomachs at that time?
Good question.
And yet you didn't have headaches. It wasn't like you had a throbbing headache suggesting, some type of a force field or something that was affecting your mind at that time. It hit you in the stomach.
As soon as we left the tunnel, the fog was gone and we felt fine.
Right. That quickly.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It was almost, almost immediately, if not, like within a few minutes.
And simultaneously, both of you.
Yeah.
It wasn't where that's very, very compelling.
Mm-hmm. Especially to make you guys that sick. And it seemed to, it almost seemed like it was targeting the female, Makaila. And then you felt it because you touched her and you were kind of immersed in it as well. But she was the one that experienced earlier in the same location with this presence or entity or whatever form it was. So it almost seems like it was targeting her, but it was kind of like affecting the whole group once she was, had targeted.
Yeah, and I'll bring this up quick because I want to get into the cryptid stuff. But after that time, I started having things happen at home.
Ooh.
It followed you.
Yes.
Just you or both of you?
Yeah, I, for my knowledge, just me. I don't. She's never. If she had anything, she's never told me.
Yeah, I try to ignore it. It's one of those.
So you did have it though.
Yeah, it was like a figure for me for a while. Like,
were you seeing it out of the corner of your eye?
It wasn't like even just that. It was like in the doorways for like years after that.
Yes. I was like seeing, we've never talked about this, like straight up, like her and I have never talked about this.
No, because I did not want to, again, it's one of those things where it's not a problem unless you talk about it, right?
Exactly. No, but it for me, it was like, I would see like a dark figure out of the corner of my eye. Like, and I would, it was always in my peripherals. It was never, I never saw it directly on. Yeah.
Would you say, or have you done any research in what are referred to as the shadow people?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
A little bit.
That a little bit. And not that I have ever looked into it. I have a colleague who's a good friend who lectures on it and has written a book about the shadow people. And I find myself very often that I'll be in my office, I'll be at home, I'll even be elsewhere, and I will pick up what appears to be someone out of the corner of my eye and quickly turn, and no one's there. And it's always represented in shadow form. Mm-hmm. I'm not making out color, I'm not hearing anything, but it's like something catches me from the corner of either eye. And it always turns out to be like a shadow just sweeping through the room or moving off to the side. And I'm hearing that this is quite familiar, quite often experienced by most people for some reason. So in other words, suggesting again another realm of existence, another plane of existence around us, that every so often it slips through, it skirts, between our reality and theirs. And every so often, we open that door. Mm-hmm. And so I compliment both of you for, being brave enough to do that.
And going back.
Yes.
Yeah, we've been back a couple of times.
And going back a couple of times.
But Nash, you just learned something, as we all did, that Makaila was experiencing a similar thing at home that you were. And he didn't lead you or coach you by telling you before.
That's actually incredible, since you guys didn't talk about it. So
yeah, I had no idea. Like straight up, I had no idea.
That's crazy.
Yeah, again, if you don't acknowledge it, it's not a problem.
I don't blame you. I absolutely do not blame you.
That's true, Makaila. I agree with you. That's a lot.
We're unscripted.
Exactly. It's raw and real here, folks. Tonight, let's get this done.
Send your check in the mail.
Yes. Oh my
Oh, wait,
gosh.
I gotta scroll. Oh, there we go.
So okay, so now let's dive into the cryptid space, because these are some amazing topics that I do want to talk about, and there's a couple of cryptids that you guys actually did research that I want to hear about what happened in the field researching, not just from watching the show. And I'm sure Dawn has some questions. So since I started this off, let's go ahead and have you ask the first question of the night.
Well, I'm learning, I'm listening, so I'm going to follow your lead, Brit, because I did come into this midstream, so to speak. And as I suggested, I asked about the smells, because we all know, for example, the Men in Black phenomenon. Mm-hmm. And this even crosses over beyond UFOs. There's been such a phenomenon, even I believe it was Thomas Jefferson or John Adams, one of the first presidents, talks about a Man in Black experience in his memoirs. Okay. And so that's why I come at this more as everything is interlinked. That as much as we would like to create as far as hard lines and barriers and that everything is well defined, it's not. I think that's why these mysteries remain mysteries, and you can't recreate them in a lab. You can't repeat them because everything is so blurry. Whether it's a mist or a fog or a fuzzy photograph or something that you look at it and it appears transparent. It looks like you can see right through it, that type of thing. Now you see it, now you don't, like the Cheshire cat. You see the smile, but the cat's gone, that type of thing. And so anyone that is, again, I use the word brave enough to seek answers where there are no answers. We're not doing it, for the thrill of being scared. We're doing it because we're looking for a truth. We're looking for solutions. And so we're all part of the same journey in many respects. Mm-hmm. And so for the two of you being younger in that regard, you remind me very much of how I was at that time. And I had a scientific director by the name of Dr. Jalen Hynek, who figuratively took me by the hand and said, someday this is all going to be passed on to you. You're going to have to finish. You're going to have to complete what we're starting here. And so as quickly as the years go by, you're going to face the same situation. Mm-hmm. Because people have been exploring all this for centuries, mm-hmm. not just decades, but for centuries. And the thought that this slow drip of where we hope to get a little closer incrementally, year after year after year. And before we know it, all of a sudden we're middle age, or all of a sudden we're getting older. And it's like, well, I'd like to believe I've made a difference. But then who do I pass it down to? So we root you, we cheer you on from the sidelines because you have your best years ahead of you. And so it's not so much a question as much as go get them.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait.
Appreciate it. So I'm trying to get my son immersed in this as soon as possible.
Teach them young, Nash. Teach them young. I've always said that. Well, then I'll go ahead and get into it in regards to, so one of the cryptid spaces you guys tapped into, and I want to know all about it, is you guys went up to Delaware.
Vermont.
Huh?
Vermont.
Oh, was it Vermont?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it depends on which one you're talking about. Are you talking about Champ or are you talking about Puckwudgies?
Puckwudgies.
So Massachusetts.
The other night she got
Massachusetts. Yeah, sorry.
The other night she got the country wrong, so at least she got one of the states right. So
you're close.
What? That never happened, by the way, Makaila Nash. That never happened. Anyway, he always gives me a hard time. So again, a lot of people don't know about this cryptid, and it is in the cryptid space, but it's part of a folklore. and it's never really talked about because it was more of like a Native American type, folklore. So I want to know how that went down and what made you guys go, we're going to look for this little 3-foot guy that's living out in the woods that the Native Americans have seen forever and talk about them, and what was your experience and what did you uncover that was truly exciting that kept you on your toes for both of you? I want this for both of you to answer, for Makaila and Nash, because this is exciting to me because nobody talks about this stuff and I'm immersed in it and I love it. So I want to know about it. I want to tell us all. Just tell us.
So the Pukwudgies was one that's been on our episode list from the very beginning. This is back to when like Caitlin was a part of the show, because she lived out there. She's who told me about it. She was like, you guys got to come here and look at this, because it's, it's everybody talks about it out here. Yeah, but Pukwudgies, they're a Wampanoag legend. They are a little person described as, being able to, wielding spears and fire, and they're kind of, it almost seems like they're more of like the spiritual descendants of the Wampanoag than anything physical. It's out of the 4 that we looked at in kind of our first YouTube season. That was kind of the one that really is more on that kind of folklore side. Yeah, so we went out to Freetown Fall River State Forest, which is kind of where this thing is, where a lot of the stories originate. And we kind of just kept uncovering a lot of weird stuff that,
what kind of weird stuff? What were some of those weird things that made you go, okay, something's not right, that kept you going? Okay, Makaila, your turn.
I mean, I think the first thing for me is just like the vibe, I guess, at Maiden Rock was definitely not great. It was very spooky, similar to Hell's Tunnel, but I think like what stuck out the most was like the Satanism, or at least like the crazy cult things that kind of kept like uncovering themselves while we were there.
Yikes.
Yeah, so this ledge that she was talking about, literally on the top of it, there was like a massive like spray painted pentagram. We talked to, where did we talk to this guy? Was it at the it was at that
It was at the gas station, wasn't it?
I thought it was when we were getting the fish. That was a seafood place.
That would make sense.
But yeah, so we as we were just kind of like in between shooting, we were just in public places, so we would just kind of poke around. And so we asked some guy, we were at this seafood place in is it Freetown? Fall River. And we're like, have you heard about any of the stuff in the forest? And the guy's like, oh yeah, I used to walk my dogs out there, and then I saw 3 people in like hooded cloaks, and I stopped going out there. And then we were, we had gone out there during the day to shoot some just kind of B-roll and just kind of footage of us kind of exploring it during the day. And as we were leaving, there was, what was it, like 3 or 4, I mean, they were like high school age kids going in and past us. And we just kind of, were, as a joke, we're like, watch out for the Pukwudgies or whatever. And like one of them turned around, it's like everyone keeps telling us that. And, so it's kind of one of those areas where like, it's very local, it's got some local folklore to it. It's known from the locals to, to kind of give you a good scare. But I mean, this was an area that was a mob dump. They found bodies out there, and dead babies and like all kinds. It's so we kind of like, and this is kind of all at the end of the episode. We kind of do like a big round table thing, and we all kind of as a group, we're like, based on what we have discovered and kind of on the information that we've gathered, it seems like the Pukwudgies, a real legend in themselves, have been kind of used as like a cute mask for all of the kind of dark, pretty dark stuff. This is Sonnet Ledge. that we were on has had a lot of like just kind of weird freak suicides where people just kind of like randomly throw themselves off of it out of nowhere. I mean, it's like an old quarry, so there's water below, and people do cliff jump into the water and stuff like that. But if you jump short, you're hitting the rocks. And so there was stories of a guy that was up there with his girlfriend and a couple friends, and guy had no previous mental issues, no dark thoughts, was a pretty relatively happy guy, and they were up on top of the ledge and he just jumped off out of nowhere and killed himself. And we spoke to a guy, Paulino, that he has photographs of what look like little people in the trees, in an area that he took these photos in an area where he's had another guy say that he saw a pukwudgie try to lead him off in the woods.
So, okay, so you guys, so you went out looking for this legend, but it turned into so much more than just these, little cool 3-foot creature like guys. Did it ever occur to you or hit you that when you discovered kind of like the satanic ritual area and then learning some of the stories, that what people think they're seeing or these little creatures could be demons that are like affecting people to do horrible things in this area?
It definitely crossed my mind.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't flat out, we didn't come out and flat out say, okay, this is, obviously where this is going. But yeah, I feel like it, if you want to kind of take it that direction, I think that's, definitely a possibility, just with the kind of dark stuff, just the dark history of that area. And just the known kind of things that have been found done.
The first thing that came to mind with me was either the Devonshire Devil or the Dover Demon.
The Dover Demon.
The Dover Demon is in the New Hampshire area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you're talking about a small statured being that basically is like a peeping Tom, going from house to house, window to window, up on roofs and through walls, or continuing their stride on the other side of a wall. After a fresh snow, actually seeing the Colvin footprints as far as in the snow, and never witnessed but the footprints. And well, I should say they were witnessed, because like the Dover Demon was with glowing red eyes and with a larger head, but hiding in the trees, hiding, as far as in the woods, that type of thing. And so if these are isolated cases, they become part of urban legend, and then places become famous for that reason. But the fact that, again, there are many accounts, many small communities that have such legends of beings, and it's unless one actually goes to investigate and check it out, and then people come out of the woodwork, so to speak, because it's obviously the type of thing that you don't talk about in mixed company at the restaurant over the weekend. And so
that's true.
You make an excellent point that unless you actually go out and seek information, it's often hidden. There's a wealth of storylines. There's a wealth of folklore that is based on actual eyewitness accounts. And the only reason it becomes folklore is that's how communities deal with it.
Yep.
And making sure it doesn't get out of hand, that it doesn't become a tourist attraction, that they don't get labeled, a bunch of fruits and nuts because one person happened to see something. But nonetheless, very often, it stems from an actual occurrence. And that's, again, where investigators need to go in and just flesh out these stories. And you're going to find that there are patterns, that they're happening all over the world.
Yeah. But I mean, like, even for you and Makaila, when you say that in these investigations, when you've got like, and as Don and I like to say it, actual boots on the ground in these investigations, and you come across these stories and all these different folklores and legends that, like Don said, there is some truth to it. Like there was something there, or they are seeing things. And in some cases, you know, I almost feel like they don't want all the publicity and people coming after it. So I think they might send you down a rabbit hole. It's not actually the right way. I mean, would you agree? I mean, I know that that's happened a lot in the Bigfoot community from even my own field work, that there are people, there was a lady in Florida that believed, and she wouldn't let anybody come to her house, but she came out eventually and mentioned that, yes, for, you know, so many years, she was feeding skunk ape off her back porch, families. Now, these accounts, I mean, she was an older woman that lived alone. And so these accounts made me go, well, I don't really want to doubt her because she didn't tell anybody. She kept it private to herself. And I think that was because she didn't want anybody coming and harassing her, or what she believed was these animals she was feeding. But then when she was passing, she shared it because she was afraid that somebody would hurt them. And so she wanted to make sure that whoever got the house after her would take care of them and continue the way she fed them, because they would come to her. That to me is
Brit,
like a normal story versus some of the ones I've heard.
Brit, you know what that reminds me of? The late Betty White in Lake Placid.
Lake Placid, I was thinking the same thing.
Yes. The monster croc. Exactly. But you know, I hate to say it, and I just want everybody to understand, if that was happening to me, I would be doing the exact same thing. I wouldn't tell anybody, just because I'd be like, I know what you're going to do. And Lake Placid is the prime example. What did they want to do? Okay. Just saying. But we're down to the last few minutes here. And so if there's another question, Don, you want to get in, I do want the both of you to come back on the show. I would love to get into deeper discussions because we're coming up on the top of the hour. But in the meantime, I know that you guys have an event coming up that you guys are going to be appearing at, correct?
I will be there. Makaila has a wedding to go to.
Okay.
I will be there.
You will be there. So, but I still want, if you guys have any, social media platforms or any way for people to come and watch, obviously your YouTube channel, Chasing Legends, which I love. So if you guys want to go ahead and talk about some of that for the listeners, that would be great. And then if Don, if you have anything else to say before we send them on their way for the next mission.
Yeah, well, certain, but let Nash, as far as provide the audience, the listeners, as far as with his contact information.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Nash Hoover, all one word. At Chasing Legends TV is our Facebook and Instagram. Find us on YouTube at Chasing Legends, or if you just want to go to one place and find it all, you can go to ChasingLegendsCrew.com.
And Makaila, do you have also any social platforms where people can reach out and stay in touch with you and see what you're up to with the show?
Price Show Big.
My Instagram is Price Show Pig, but honestly, if you reach out to us through our social TV show Instagram, excuse me, and that might be a better way, just so I can kind of be a bit more professional with you there.
That's awesome. I love the handle name. And then the event, go ahead and tell us where you're going to be at this event coming up, Nash, which is a shame, Makaila, you can't be there, but we get it. Things come up. So Nash, go ahead and tell us, where's this event?
So I'm going to the wedding. What's that?
I said, I'm going to the wedding. That sounds fun. So,
I will be at the Marionette Menominee Bigfoot and Paranormal Conference in Menominee, Michigan on June 4th. I will not be speaking. I'll be manning a booth. But there are other great people speaking. Ken Gerhard is there speaking. Allison Jornlin, she's a really big Mothman researcher.
I know Allison very well. Yes.
Yes, she's very good. Barnaby Jones, who is the guy that is putting it all on with Wisconsin Caps. He's a speaker, big paranormal guy, does a lot of Bigfoot stuff up in northern Wisconsin and UP Michigan. There's going to be a lot of great booths, a lot of great people that are going to be there in the field that aren't speaking. I will be there with my fiance and my son. So come on out and say hello.
That's awesome. If anything, come say hello to the little guy because he is
Yes.
a cutie patootie. Trust me. I love that little guy.
Keenan
Love
will be
seeing the
representing.
pictures. He's so cute.
See, I'm always quick to encourage any such events because for being the oldest person in the room, as I'm always reminded, I've seen a lot of programming, a lot of conditioning that all of these topics were to become part of the silly season, as they used to call it, that everything had a shelf life and that people would get over such beliefs and experiences and just move on to the next one. And what they never considered was they kept coming back because people kept having experiences, but they never had anybody to talk to. They never had anybody to share such bizarre, such strange experiences with. And that's the wonderful thing about cable television and the podcasts and the investigators, the researchers in the field, because for the first time, people actually have a sympathetic ear, someone who will listen and then do something with the information and discover that there are patterns, that they're hearing these stories, these accounts over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And they're being cataloged, they're being recorded, they're being filed. And we're realizing that it's only because there's a high strangeness factor in all this, that governments, that places of higher learning, just people in general, they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to have to consider it because their lives are complicated enough. Thank God there are people that are willing to step outside of the box, willing to think outside the circle. And they realize there's a whole other world out there. And we're just starting to get a handle on it. And one of these days, it's going to turn around and look us square in the eyes. And we may not look back. We may not like what we're looking at. But nonetheless, we got to stay in pursuit. Because if we don't, then who? So
Exactly.
I applaud both of you for doing just that.
Appreciate it.
Yep, I do too. And I thank you guys so much for coming on the show and taking the time. I'm sure that it was hard, Nash, with you having the little one, but I'm grateful for both of you being able to come on and talk tonight about this. And again, like I said, we only got to just start getting into the cryptid space after the really cool, amazing story. Poor Makaila. Sorry to hear that story. But I would love to invite you guys back to No Earthly Explanation to talk more about some of the latest, that you've put out as well in the cryptid space. Cause I think there's so much there to talk about. And I agree with Don, and as we said earlier, it's definitely, there's more to the paranormal than just ghost hunting. And there's more to cryptid
Absolutely.
than just Bigfoot. So I do want to welcome you guys back to come and discuss that again, because I love these topics. I know Don does too. So thank you for taking the time and coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I promise to be there. Yes.
I promise to be there. That's good, Don. That's good. I'm glad the aliens let you go for a couple hours tonight so we can have this conversation.
Though the saucer's coming back in 10 minutes, so I got to hurry.
You better go get your Mountain Dew before you got to go back.
Not tonight. I had it yesterday, though.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks again for listening and coming onto the show tonight as well. Nash, Makaila, again, wonderful having you on. Continue the amazing work. I love everything that you guys do in this space. I am going to continue to follow and be a fan as always. So keep it up, and you have a home here at No Earthly Explanation to come back and share all of your really cool information and stories with. Please come back anytime.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Well, that was quite a ride of hearing some of the things. I can tell you, I don't think I'm going to be going into any dark bridges anytime soon, especially if I see any fogs or mists. I don't know about you, Don, but that certainly seems a little horrifying. And what I loved the most was the fact that she never shared any of that with Nash. And it was kind of like a first time on our show that they explained they were having the similar experiences after what they went through on both sides at home of seeing things in their home. So that's quite fascinating. I don't know what you took from that, but I know that I think when I see something, I'm going to say something the next time I'm out investigating with friends.
Well, as we have said, we're investigating and exploring with our guests things that go bump in the night. And we've all had such experiences. And as a result, we're dealing with kindred spirits who feel that we're discussing things that one may not hear about at the water cooler, at the coffee, pot, at work the next day. But we're always going to cover such issues and areas of fascination here on No Earthly Explanation.
That is for sure. I did love talking to them. They're fun. Chasing Legends is a great show to watch on YouTube, and I'm glad they were able to come on and share those stories with us tonight, and hopefully they will again soon, because that would be awesome. So until next time, all of you wonderful listeners, again, we thank you so much for coming out and listening to No Earthly Explanation. And as we continue to banter, thank you again for also listening, and do your research as well on the new Black Fault report that came out, that the document that Don and I were talking about. You can find it online, all the news locations, all of them are talking about it right now. So if you'd like to see it yourself, feel free to look it up online, and feel free to send us emails, which you can at noearthlyexplanation@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. You can also find us on anchor.fm/No Earthly Explanation. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and of course now Amazon Podcasts, and anywhere that you'd like to listen to us talk your ear off. You can follow us on Facebook at /No Earthly Explanation, Instagram at No Earthly Explanation, or you can follow us individually as the hosts of the show, and you can reach out to Don, because I know you want to. You can reach out to us on Instagram at Brit Barbieri 1T, or you can look for Donald Raymond Schmidt on Instagram, and feel free to reach out to us on all of our platforms. Send us emails, send us your love. We know how much you love Don. It's okay. I get it. My feelings aren't hurt. I'll get there one day. And until next time, I'm going to go jump on my unicorn and head out. Don, what are you writing this evening?
Well, I'm going to sleep in a haunted house tonight. So I'll
good luck.
back tomorrow morning, whether I make it or not. So
I'll be sure to check in. I'll check in and send you a text. I don't know. We'll see. But until next time, everyone, thank you so much for coming to have a listen. We hope you enjoyed it, and have a wonderful and pleasant day, evening, afternoon, and good night.
Night, everyone. Good day.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please be sure to rate and review this episode. This podcast is produced by Todd Fisher and distributed by Metacortex Publishing. This podcast is copyright. Any previously trademarked or copyright content is used by permission. Information and opinions stated in this podcast should not be construed as medical advice. Please be sure to visit the official website for the International Association of Metatomics at metatomics.org, or find us on social media for other unique content.